Welcome to Lincoln County Courthouse and the July Planning Commission meeting. This meeting is the Lincoln County Planning Commission will begin with a few introductory remarks. This meeting is being streamed live, and when adjourned and posted, it will be available at any time at lincolncountysd.org. The order of events tonight will be as follows. For each public hearing, staff will introduce the agenda item and present a summary of the staff report. The applicant will then be asked to explain their proposal in further detail and to answer any questions from the Planning Commission. I will then open the floor to public comment, first for persons in support of the application and then for persons in opposition of the application. When you step to the podium, please state your name, address, and speak into the microphone. Please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes. Noah will be timing, and there's a little red, yellow, green thing on the podium, and once 5 minutes hits, red comes on, and you'll be asked to wrap up your comments. So speakers are encouraged to only address new and relevant information pertaining to the item. Above all, please be cordial to all meeting participants and refrain from side conversations and speaking out of turn, or you'll be asked to leave. Thank you for your cooperation. The Planning Commission will first do roll call. Planning Commission members, please state your name for the record. Commissioner Sweeter?
Just say your name. I think you want.
Or we'll just start down
Sweeter.
there. Yep.
Jerry Jungling. Michael Poppins.
Eric Scott.
Todd Boots.
Scott Green.
And that's it. Okay. We will now approve the meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Green.
Second Jungling.
We've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay. Minutes. Now we're going to approve the agenda. Mr. Brown, is there any changes to the meeting agenda?
No changes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay. Our next item is public input on non-agenda items. So I'll ask any of those with comments for any items that are not on the agenda to please step forward with their comments. Seeing none, we're going to close the floor for public input on non-agenda items. Mr. Brown, is there any old business to discuss?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll move on to the public hearings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Toby Brown, representing County Planning Department. This first item before you this evening is an application for a rezone petition. Specifically is from the A1 Agricultural District to the C Commercial District. The applicant and property owner for this is Dennis Klinghagen. The property is approximately a little over a mile to the southwest of the city of Harrisburg. Comprehensive plan future land use map identifies this as agricultural with a nodal commercial, rural, industrial at the interchange. So it's a mix of what I would call an expansion of a rural, commercial, industrial area and agricultural area. Specifically, this property parcel is 5 acres in size. Just to the north of this and just to the east of this is the Valley Business Park addition, which has been established. I believe the first phases were in 2004, 2005, right around that time. The last portion would have been this portion directly to the east, which was rezoned in 2018. The property to the east and then this property currently fall under the subdivision authority of the city of Harrisburg. So they did plat the property directly to the east, as well as any platting of this property will take place. Subject property is currently undeveloped. There's no structures currently on the property. These are some photos taken directly northeast, south, and west of the subject property. Again, the proposal is to rezone 5 acres of this to commercial. Staff's analysis that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan. This does address essentially, it essentially fits a better, or it doesn't impact the character of the area, or the character of the area is switching more to commercial in this area. as well, so it'd be like zone, as well as like uses will be in that area. So I have had discussions with the applicant. There's really no concept plan at this stage, other than similar type development that occurs in the rest of the development there. With that, if you have any questions that you have for staff at this time?
Anybody have any questions for staff? Thanks, Toby.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can I ask the applicant to come forward? State their name and address and a little bit about what you're asking to do.
Dennis Klinghagen, 3536 West 91st Place, Sioux Falls. I'm the owner and developer of the Valley Business Park. This is the last lot or piece of ground that I have that is not in the commercial, that didn't get put in with the original 40-acre plan. I mentioned at the time when we did the other one, this could just as well be added to it, but it didn't get done that time, so. I had planned on at one time building a house there, but the way it turns out, I'd be looking out of my living room at a wall of dirt in a building, and I'm quite sure nobody else wants to do that either.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair. Is that a private road then, where your driveway to this new development would be? Or your new rezone there?
There is really no driveway into that. It comes off of the road out of the park there. That's the one I used on the,
I think that's
To
called
the-
Place Suite, was it?
It says on here Fairfield, is that right?
Yeah, Fairfield Place, is that,
Fairfield, yeah. Fairfield, yeah.
does the county or does the township maintain that road, or is that?
No, that's mine.
You do, yeah, it says a
Yeah,
private road.
Plans are in this fall yet, maybe, or by next spring have it blacktopped.
Sure,
It was supposed to happen last year, but it didn't happen.
yeah. Seems like everybody's busy, I
Yeah.
understand, yeah.
That was the problem.
And yeah,
It-
just
it
looking
is-
at the map, it
It
looks
is in
like,
the works, the asphalt companies know that since we did the original plans, we had to leave that road off until, but he's aware of it and trying to work it in, so.
so the access to this lot is off that Fairfield.
Yeah,
Yep.
well, that's the access I have, yes.
Yep.
There is no driveway
Off the township.
off the township road, no.
Okay.
You haven't previously tried to rezone. You'd mentioned that you just as well have done this last time. You haven't previously tried to rezone this. This
No,
is
I
your-
just mentioned to Toby, I said we could just well do it.
This is your first attempt, actually.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I had just left it that way until what happened in the last year and a half, and plans changed, and I've had some interest in commercial property buyers there, so.
Dennis, that answered one of my questions. Sounds like I know some of those roads needed to get hard surface. Sounds like you got most of them done. Thank you for getting that. I know there were some people then in there that were hoping for that to be a little sooner, but
Yeah, well,
better late than never.
It's in the works, yes.
I do have a question for you. Toby, would you be so kind as to pull up the aerial map, please? Can we, I'm speaking to the one that's got the highlighted blue that showed some images of the existing development and how the conditions are in there.
I think if you just zoom in on this one a little bit, you'll see that.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Is that a pretty good accurate depiction of how day-to-day operations are in the existing development, Dennis?
Pretty much, yes.
And I don't know if we're getting complaints, Dennis, or not. That's not my point, but I can look at this and go, things just don't look quite right, Dennis.
Well, there's some things I don't like there either.
Well, Okay, so
Cross.
we're,
across the road there, yes.
the county's been working very hard to
Yes,
clean things up.
I'm a little bit disappointed in that, yes.
So I have reservations about
You-
adding anything.
You're talking,
And there's
Where it
several
says-
properties in there that,
yes, you're talking east of the welding shop.
well, there's 4 in there or 5 in there that look like they're in pretty disarray. Things are, and I haven't driven through your development, but I'm just looking at this from an aerial perspective, and it doesn't look like it's tidy. Well, I'm just asking if that's the way you look at it too, and it sounds like,
Well, yeah. As far as the other businesses,
yes.
well, there was some things a couple of the guys did that I didn't think should have happened there. And I've talked to a couple of them about some of what they're gonna do there, get it cleaned up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so it's hard for me to want to do more, although it makes sense because it's those phone calls are the ones I get is,
Yes, I
hey,
understand.
so is there anything you can do in your covenants on this 5 acres when you, if this was get rezoned and get replatted? Is there anything you're willing to do to try to make sure this kind of activity
Well,
gets
that-
cleaned up?
The potential buyer that I've talked to there, that'll be mostly buildings. So there won't be any outside storage.
Okay, Dana, I appreciate the honesty on it, but the county's worked hard in developments and there's a few things, but they're doing a better job. This is a relatively new development, it's kind of expanded. I'm a little disappointed. And it's not you, it's the people coming in there, per se, but it doesn't give us a good image of what we're trying to do in the rural areas. It's hard enough to try to rezone property in the rural areas and then not to have
Well,
it.
it's hard, yeah,
So I just wanted to share my thoughts. Thank
it's,
you.
it's hard for me to tell people not to park their stuff there or whatever.
Yeah, and once we've rezoned it, it's hard to go backwards. So it's hard for me to even think about rezoning
I
again.
made, my biggest thing was, when I did sell a lot, I wanted a picture or a decent looking building. I didn't want something junky out there and
Yep.
everybody's pretty much done that. They've, all that, but what they put on their lots, I think is probably, the conditional use permit.
I'm sure you're not, I'm sure you're not happy with the way it looks
No,
either.
I'm,
Yeah,
no, I'm
so
not.
it just makes it tough because now complaints
understand.
have to come in, then we have to exercise the procedures to go out there and try to rectify things that, if they had done their job in the first place, kept a tidy place, we wouldn't have these issues. And other people like yourself wouldn't have as hard of a time trying
I
to
really
get.
haven't had anybody complain about that part of it. I have had a couple complain about the one lot there with the weeds and all that. That's
Yeah.
not being taken care of. That's,
It's all part of it.
Yeah.
So, anyway, those are my thoughts
Okay.
and just something
I
I'm
appreciate it.
considering, so.
Any more questions for Mr. Klinkhagen? Hearing none? Thanks, Dennis. Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of the application? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition of the application? Okay, seeing none there, I'm going to close the floor to public comment, and we'll entertain a motion for approval, and then we can have some discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve, John Lynn.
Second, Boots.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Now, we'll have some discussion.
I'm going to just kind of speak to staff. Toby, we've worked hard trying to clean things up. And again, I haven't had a lot of calls on it. Some random calls have been over the time, but I guess it was a little startling to me when I took an aerial view of it. It isn't what I would have envisioned we would be wanting to look at from a county perspective. So Toby, is there anything else that we can do, or otherwise we just make Joe's life a little more difficult and have to go after some of these things as times progress to try to get them into compliance to our, our general standard of appearance. So, and how property should be maintained for their benefit and as well as those around it. But it is logical that this is a continuation, completion of a rezoning area. I am going to support it, but I am going to share that I am disappointed that property owners are, they're under a watchful eye. And unless they like to have a visit with our staff randomly, because a lot of those will have conditional use permits that are, have the ability to be revoked if conditions are kept up to standards. So those are my thoughts. I will support the rezone, but the aerial map was, I think, a little more telling than I anticipated sitting and looking at it, so. That's it, thank you.
I agree with you, Commissioner Poppins.
I agree, Commissioner Poppins. This does fill out the industrial park and everything seems to fit there also. I'm going to support it also.
Right, this is a lot like the one we saw at the joint meeting. It squares everything off nice, like it's, but yeah, concur with the current, I drove through there about a month ago and I think the aerial view is a pretty accurate depiction of what's out there, so.
Yeah, Boots here. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense where it's at, so I would support it too, but besides the aerial, I drove through there this weekend and yeah, it definitely needs a little bit of tidying up out there, so.
So I think, for sure in the past year, maybe two, we've had a lot of discussions like this, and especially in this area. And when you look at the zoning map of that area, we always, we get a little confused because there was maybe some things done many years ago that's made that whole area and that exit, both sides of that exit, kind of interesting. And I guess I'm in support of approval on just this one to square that up, but I think it's also a good thing for us to see that going forward, I think with caution, we really got to think about these going forward, so that we don't end up with this, things like this in an area that can't be serviced by a municipality right now. I just think going forward, a lot of this type of zoning would be much easier, coming from a municipality and out. And I think even from yes, there was probably a conditional use permit for this other property, there would be for any of these properties, but it's also unfair for Mr. Brown's office, say he isn't staffed enough to police all of this. And so I think that's what we have to consider a little bit is on any future approvals. So that's just kind of my opinion. But yes, I will be in support in this one. Not necessarily because I'm in support of this type of zoning in the rural area, but for this one property to square it up and be done. But going forward, I don't know that I would support this. So, any other comments? Okay, we'll call the roll. Commissioner Green?
Yes.
Commissioner Boots?
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling?
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeter?
Yes.
And Commissioner Scott is also a yes. Thanks, Dennis. Mr. Bronk, we have item number 2.
Well, that transitions into item number 2. So next item on the agenda, this is an application from DLRS Properties, Inc. For a conditional use permit for outdoor warehousing or warehousing outdoor storage on the property. Subject property is a little over a mile to the southwest of the city of Harrisburg in the La Valley Business Park addition. Subject property is zoned commercial. Subject property does not have any structures on it. It has materials on it. It does have some trailers that are utilized for storage on the property. So these are some pictures that were recently took last week, looking to the northeast, west, and south of the property. Primarily, the ones looking to the west would be the subject areas. So the applicant did not submit really a site plan with the application. And so for that reason, staff did recommend denial of this application. I think leading into and kind of continuing the discussion that you had in general on the last application is that, as we process conditional use permits, we need to take a look at what they're using for screening of the property, primarily fencing materials and things like that. So staff, again, does recommend denial of this application. However, if you discuss with the applicant and find a reason to approve this, we'd recommend that you would add those two conditions that were on the staff report. And that's primarily to provide some 90% opaque screening along the perimeter. That'd be the entire property. And that we would want that installed within 90 days, and it shall be properly maintained thereafter. I think part of the problem that we see in these industrial commercial areas, and a lot of this was approved before a lot of us were on the board and in staff, is that there wasn't thought or attention paid to screening these properties and making sure that there was fencing. And I'll say that for 2 points that I see from the county perspective, it's not only just making sure it's out of sight, out of mind, but we also have safety and security issues. A lot of crime and occurring in the county, and a lot of these properties don't have proper, what I'll call security fencing in place, as well as screening type fencing in place. But, have concerns with the property. There is a letter that we received. If that person's not, I'll read that into the record as an opposition to the application. Raising questions on about, I won't go into specific details, that there is a nuisance violations on the property that's been gone through some legal processes, as well as I would still say it's an open case, so I'm not going to comment on any of that part of it. Really what we're here tonight to take a look at is that, in the words of the applicant, and we've got some unpermitted outdoor storage on the property, the way to remedy that would be to put the fence up. But if the fence isn't up, then we do have a violation, a zoning violation on the property. But as you are aware, is that our department does work with applicants to give them an opportunity to come into compliance as a remedy to the situation too. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, the applicant is on the phone to answer any questions that you have for them as well.
Mr. Brown, can you just give us kind of a rundown of what the county's stance is on outdoor storage? Or what our ordinances are?
So
What's allowed, what isn't?
Yeah, so the conditional use, so this is a commercially zoned property, and a permitted special use in the commercial district would be warehousing. And so, which is structures, non-structures. But a condition of the permitted special use is no outdoor storage. So in order to have outdoor storage in the commercial district, it does have to flip to a conditional use permit, which is what this would be.
So do we have very many of those?
Yeah, number of them. Yep.
Okay.
Got one just on the block. It'd be the Notabooms was the last one that you approved there. So they
Okay.
do have camper storage on
Oh,
that property.
okay.
Yep.
And that one's fenced?
Yes, that one's fenced. Yep. It's not screened though, and I think that's, what I think you see here is what from here on out staff's gonna recommend on a lot of these. It'll be 90% opaque, so that we get the security and the screening that we need.
So
Yeah.
does the applicant have a conditional use permit currently?
No, it's expired.
It's expired, okay.
There are no active permits on that property, no building and no conditional use.
So if it was denied, what would the move forward plan be?
So I'm not gonna go in discussions.
Oh, you
with
don't
that.
know? I mean,
Well, I know, but we're not gonna, that's,
Okay.
that's the next kind of phase, part of the active case. So,
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions for staff?
So without a conditional use permit, what is permissible then on this property currently as it is without a conditional use permit?
Well, he could construct, which is what one of the building permits was for warehousing. He could do up to 10,000 square feet of warehousing, mini storage on the property, as well as whatever is a permitted or permitted special use in the district, offices, those different types of things. There's things that could be done on the property, so,
Thanks, Toby.
yep, thank you.
we still have more questions for you. No, I'm kidding, I'm just kidding. Okay, all right, so I'll ask the applicant, joining us on the phone, state your name and address for the record, and then tell us a little bit about what you're proposing here.
Douglas Tinklenberg, 27598 479th Avenue, Harrisburg, 57032. I thought I had submitted a drawing because early on they had wanted some drawings, and so because I did not want to fence in that whole property, that would be an undue financial obligation, especially since I'm doing this temporarily to be able to get to the point where I can get the permit again to build my storage units that permit's been denied. And that's my goal, is to get that permit again so I can put up storage units that I've always wanted to put there on the east half of that property, with the plan to get that phase done and then build contractor shops on the west half. So in a sense, I wanted to fence in all those semi-trailers and get the rest of the stuff off the property temporarily until I can get the permit to start building the storage units with a lot of that material that's actually sitting there right now. Other questions you guys might have about that?
Chairman?
Yeah.
Michael Poppins. Questions that I'd have is, could you describe what items are on the property right now as we look at it from an aerial standpoint?
There is some wood there that needs to be removed. Needs to be removed. There's a truck there that needs to be removed. There's semi-trailers that I am using for storage for materials for that future storage unit. And then there's steel beams and steel siding that's stored there as well, and some form material and insulation. But I was told to stop forming up that storage unit until we could get that permit going again.
Do you have some concrete on there as well?
No.
Can you describe, there's a light area in an upside down L from
Yep.
an aerial. What is that?
That is the formed up part. There's two storage buildings that would be built. That's the larger of the two, the L-shaped one. That's the formed up area with the insulation base that the engineer and the county have requested that we put, because it's over, and Toby can answer this, over a certain number of square footage all in one building. So then we had to do an insulated floor system just to prevent frost heaving.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yep.
This is Commissioner Scott. So I guess I'm just a little confused trying to follow the path or the trail of what's happened here. So you purchased the property and then applied for a conditional use permit to build storage buildings, is that correct?
Yes.
And it was,
Well,
a-
I don't know if I had to apply for a conditional use permit. I don't remember what that step was, because it was in an industrial development. I don't remember. Toby could answer that. But yes, I renewed the permit twice, and did not get to it, quite frankly. So that's on me, because I do construction for a living and took on customer jobs, and it got delayed. That being said, it's time for it to get done or completed.
so are you currently, the stuff that's there, are you stating that that's all 100% for the storage unit, or are you also currently running your construction business off this property?
No, I'm not running the construction business off this property.
Okay, so none of the stuff that's stored there is for your own construction business?
I guess I don't quite know how to answer that. I mean, I don't know that I'll use every single piece to build the storage unit,
Well-
but it's been sitting there the whole time, so it's, you know, I've earmarked it for that.
Yeah. Well, what my concern is if you don't, I mean, you're running, you don't have a conditional use permit to basically do anything there, and it looks like we're doing stuff there. I guess that's what I'm trying to follow, why things were
So
started.
what can a person do in an industrial district? I mean, I assume, let me back up. I assume to do anything within an industrial development, you still have to apply for a conditional use permit for any type of business you're gonna run there? Because otherwise I don't understand why we classify it in industrial development, but we can't use it without going through a whole another set of hoops. I understand having to permit to build there. I understand that completely. But I don't, and especially with everything else that's in that development, some of it, there's stuff that I built a building for another gentleman there over 10 years ago, and there's still stuff laying there, and nothing's ever been done about it. So I'm just curious as to what the protocol is.
Mm-hmm.
And I know as a county, you guys have been working on trying to clean up all these areas, but I'm just a little baffled. And
Well, you can see, you can see where it's a potential problem for the county, can you not?
along with the 100, there's over 120 other properties that I have listed.
I'm just saying, I mean, you can see where this could bring, I mean, it could bring unburdened, responsibility from our sheriff's department and just things like that, and so,
Well,
you know, there's probably,
taxes for the
and there's probably,
so,
there's, you know, there's potentially other properties, but, tonight we're not talking about those, we're just talking about yours, and we have some questions on,
Yep.
on what's there, what the timeline's been in the past.
Ideally, I need the permit for the storage unit so I can get those things built.
Mm-hmm. So, Toby, could we ask you a couple questions? So has this property had a conditional use permit for structures in the past?
Contractor shops.
Contractor shops?
Yep.
So that, and they've passed, he's had the
Yep.
permits, but then they've expired and not been built in time?
Correct. They expire within 2 years of
Okay.
approval. Yep.
Okay.
Then you did have 2 building permits, one for the warehousing and one for the contractor shops.
Okay.
Both of those expired, and what I would say is the remainder of that's on site. And so our position is that we're not going to issue an additional building permit until it's cleaned up.
Sure.
And that this was a remedy to address the, so there's 2 parts to it. There's the nuisance part of it, which is not a part of this meeting tonight, not a part of you guys. And then there's the zoning part of it, which is the unpermitted outdoor storage is what I'll refer to as the semi-trailers. So that's really what this meeting is about tonight. So what he's basically stating though is that he would like to fence the trailers as opposed to what staff would recommend.
And what you're saying as staff is, his wanting a conditional use permit to finish his storage units, well, A, that has nothing to do with tonight. And we're not saying that he can't come on and apply for that, but he needs to do that if he wants to finish the storage unit, basically.
Which won't require a conditional use permit. The storage units will not require a conditional use permit. But again, it's been the position of our office that we're not going to issue a building permit until the property's cleaned
Right,
up.
yeah, okay, I understand now.
Or in compliance, and so I think the outdoor storage is one. So again, that would be removing the semi-trailers and cleaning the property up first.
Yep.
Okay?
I'm sorry to say that. That was, Toby, were you saying without without the conditional use outdoor storage, without the fence, then the semi-trailers have to go, which, am I understanding that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I would agree with you on that.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Mr. Brown. Does anybody else have questions, comments for the applicant? No. Down there, Mr. Green, you look like you're deep in thought.
Yeah, I was, I'm okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, and nobody else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Tinklenberg.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We'll move on to anybody else that's in favor of the applicant. Can they come forward and speak? Okay, seeing none. Anybody that's in opposition to the application, could they come forward and speak? And Mr. Brown has a email here to read into the record, and I believe everybody has it in front of them as well.
Yes, we did, and I'll just pull up a map to show. So this particular property owner would just be to the west adjoining the property. So this is Attention Planning Commission, Dear Lincoln County Planning Commission. Walling Property Holdings received a hearing notice for your meeting today, July 17th at 6:30 PM in regards to DLRS Properties Inc. conditional use permit application. I respectively ask that this permit application be denied. DLRS Properties has kept their property in a state of disarray for many years. In June of 2020, we filed a nuisance complaint and submitted documentation photos showing the unacceptable conditions on the site. No tangible action was taken by the landowner. Again, in the spring of 2022, I came before the Board of Commissioners seeking assistance as to what to do about the site conditions of our neighbors. May 24th, 2022, we had an on-site meeting scheduled with 4 employees of the county and state. Technically, it was 3 employees of the county were there. It was myself and our code compliance, and then Deputy State's Attorney was there as well. And the property owner, all were in attendance but the property owner, who did not show, wasting many people's time and the county's resources. Despite these inquiries, attempted meetings, and even legal action brought by the state's attorney, there's been no attempt or forward movement in cleaning up the site by the landowner. My concern moving forward is that any approvals granted this landowner will only amplify the degradation of the site conditions and lead to many more years of junk storage, further tying the hands of the county in ever-attaining site improvement. Below are photos taken on 4/29 and 7/17/2023 showing the conditions on site 15 months apart from each other. As you can see from the woodpile, only the bags of trash are gone, which have blown away into adjacent properties. From trailer photos, you can see the same piles of styrofoam planks are still piled high in between them. Any objects not appearing in the photos from today are merely covered by the weeds covering the entire site. This property owner has caused countless hours and dollars of taxpayer monies going towards getting this property cleaned up, and to this point, nothing has garnered any progress. You have many decisions to make on a regular basis as a commission. My hope is that it's an easy decision to see that the property owner should not be granted any further conditional use permits or otherwise. Thank you for your consideration while I was unable to attend this meeting or this in person this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to present my concerns and would be more than happy to come down to the courthouse to meet in person, meet on site, or connect for a remote phone call or video conference. And I'll just briefly put this on the screen. So these were the pictures that were submitted by the property owner as well. So
And this is the
If I
property
can
owner to
speak.
the direct west,
west.
correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Did he happen to
All
send
right.
any pictures of the stuff laying around his own building?
Mr. Tinklenberg, you're currently, you've had your chance to speak right now, and so you just have to hang on the line and listen. If we have any questions for you, we'll ask. Thank you.
Will I be able to give input?
No, you've already had your time to speak. Okay. Anyone else any other opposition to the application? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the floor to public comment and entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll offer a motion in affirmative without support to approve.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second. Now let's have discussion.
Yeah, this is a clear issue of, there is an existing problem on the property. I don't think advancing a fence on that property is going to remedy the situation, nor should it be rewarded. So I will not be supporting my motion to approve.
I did drive by that property this past weekend, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I will not be in support of it.
Yeah, Commissioner Boots, yeah, I drove by it this weekend too, and there's quite a bit of stuff going on there. And from what I'm reading, obviously, some of us weren't sitting up here at that time, but there's a lot of cleanup and stuff that needs to be done. And I just don't think I can support the conditional use permit to fence it all the way in, so.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, we'll call the roll. Commissioner Green,
No.
Commissioner Boots,
No,
Commissioner Poppins.
No.
Commissioner Jungling,
No.
Commissioner Sweeter,
No.
Commissioner Scott is also a no. All right, on to item number 3, Mr. Brown.
Okay, thank you. This next item is our last application public hearing for this evening. This is a conditional use permit for motor vehicle sales. Applicant is 605 Rides LLC and the property owner is Orix LLC. Subject property is about 1,000 feet to the west of the City of T corporate limits. The subject property is zoned light industrial as well as the adjacent properties on that area. Adjacent to it is also zoned commercial in that area. Subject property is developed. It does have an existing building on the property. This building was originally permitted within the last few years as a oversized warehouse building. And then at the next phase, within a couple of years, I believe, the landowner at that time came in and applied for contractor shops because a lot of what the property is being used for was contractor shops. So primarily the existing conditional use permit was for contractor shops. And I would say the building was built and designed for contractor shops / warehousing on the property. These were some pictures that were taken last week of the property. As you can see, there is what I'll call a drive, which is an asphalt drive going to it, but that's unscreened on the property. There was, if you're aware of this, I believe it was a year and a half ago, the county did approve a conditional use permit for, I believe, unit number 6 on the property for motor vehicle sales. Specifically, those were custom type vehicles on the property, and there was some conditions placed on that permit. The applicant this evening is proposing to utilize unit number 10 in the building to utilize for motor vehicle sales. I did have some discussions with them just before the meeting, and they'll give you some more kind of dialogue along with it, but it looks like they won't be doing so much of what I'd call repair on site, that it would be mostly just the car sales and just an outpost for them for the car sales portion of it. So staff did review this application, did have some concern with again, as I stated, the structure was originally built for warehousing and contractor shops, which doesn't necessitate itself to having outside items. It's really a contractor shop or warehousing is meant just pull in and just have nothing outside essentially. What I would also point out too is, I didn't get there yet. We gotta go there once, but. So what I'd also point out on here is, and this is a little bit better shot on here, and again, this aerial should be about 2 years old, but as you can see, there is a right-of-way that goes here along the north side of the property. And typically, it's an undeveloped right-of-way, so a lot of times people don't know it's there. But, we can't have people parking in the right-of-way and things like that. So again, there is concern about availability of parking and spacing for these types of uses and these structures. But staff did review the application. We've had some discussions with the applicant. We're also having some ongoing discussions with the property owner as well. But we did identify that this is consistent with the use that we did permit within a few units down from this facility. Staff did put some conditions, I believe, that what I would call pretty tight on it, that we want to try to make sure that we don't have issues with additional vehicles on the property. Because again, parking is limited in these types of facilities because it's essentially just meant for storage type things. So I do recommend approval of this request, but do request that it be with the 7 conditions that staff has identified in the staff report. We hope those conditions should alleviate some of the problems that potentially could exist. But with that, I did make sure that the applicant was aware of those conditions, and you can discuss that with them further. So with that, we have to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
And Toby, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
So on the photos, in the east look, that we see a fence. From the top aerial, I do
Oh.
not see that.
To the east of the property, that's on this adjacent property over
It's
here.
the adjacent property?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's
Yep.
not the next unit over, it's the whole building over? Thank
No.
you for that clarification.
No.
And just to, you had mentioned it, that there's a similar type use just a couple units down currently?
Yes.
Okay, and what, is that where all the extra cars are sitting?
We believe so, but we're in the process of
Okay,
investigating.
but I
that.
mean, it's
Yeah.
that way, okay.
I mean, there's
And-
multiple units in there, so we're
And
trying
so
to get, yeah.
you had mentioned that, based on that one being approved, that one was approved, that's why you would recommend approval on this one, because it's similar? Is that the only basis for recommendation of approval?
No, what I meant by that is that there's a similar use that's in that building, in that area. I mean, that isn't
Okay.
just the only,
see
there's
what you're
multiple car repair, car sales
Gotcha.
within that area.
Okay.
So, but, yeah.
Okay.
So, Commissioner Boots, but with these restrictions that are on here, that should take care of what's going on to the east, right? Where those cars are at unit 6 or 7 or
It'll
or
take
8.
care of this unit.
Yeah,
and-
but I
and
mean,
that-
we won't have the same thing because Saturday's picture looks a whole lot different than that aerial view between the stuff that's piled up alongside there, and the cars now are too deep back there.
Yeah, I think, my response on that and on all these responses, it's really up to the applicant. So, for compliance, yeah.
I'll give my comment if it's all right, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Before the applicant gets
Yeah.
up, because my thought on this and my action, unless something changes dramatically with his presentation, is we cannot reward one piece of property or a portion of a property when the whole property is not in compliance from our rules. And the property is not in compliance of our regulations and for safety and other things. I think it needs to be put on notice that property owners that lease out subsections, that their whole property has to be in compliance for any property to receive conditional use permit. That's my thought. Thank
I
you.
like it. Thanks, Commissioner Poppins. Any other questions for Mr. Brown and staff?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can we ask we'll ask the applicant to come up, state your name and address for the record.
Jeremy Keating, 605 Rides, 4109 East Brookline, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And just wanted to sell clean cars, no service or anything, just mainly all inside. Most of them inside. I think there's 8 cars you could put inside and 5 spots up front, so the service part would be like on a third party if I had to do service. But if there is service, it won't be in there. Non-repairable cars. I mean, I was kind of, when I was looking to the east over there, I was kind of thinking like, kind of questioned me if I wanted to be in there because he has a lot of cars on the north side. So
So with your business, you'd mentioned that most of them are going to be inside?
Yeah.
Are you
there's
selling
8
like
spots in there.
higher-end cars or what?
What's that?
Are you selling like higher-end cars or what's kind of your business model?
Clean, non-repairable cars.
Okay,
So nothing.
clean title,
Yeah,
non-repairable.
clean,
Okay,
non-repairable. I don't want to do with salvage title.
okay. Do you currently operate a business right now somewhere
No,
else?
I don't.
Okay.
So.
What's the reason for this location?
It's just a temporary spot till I find like a permanent commercial spot.
Is it hard to find
It is hard to find
Okay.
commercial for
that's
car
open
sales.
for rent?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for the applicant?
I guess I would, if you had any comment concerning my concerns, I'm, obviously you're going to be renting it, you don't control the building.
Sure.
But it's difficult for us because we have limited resources to try to get property into compliance to what is deemed to be the normal operating procedures for a
I completely
structure.
understand. I was like, when I came in there, like, are they going to move those cars? You know, like the property owner said, yeah, they're having problems with the county. So they said they're going to move the cars. So I don't know.
Sure.
I don't want to be like that.
Yeah, and I don't think you would be. The unfortunate you're trying to get into a property that's clearly has some issues.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if the property owner's actively participating in it. I'm on board. I don't want to deny this gentleman. I think has a good feeling for what he wants to do, and what he's proposing will be good, but we have to do something to try to get a message out there to property owners that they need to, clean up things on their own instead of having to have us come. So I don't know if tabling it and had a conversation with your, the property owner and say, hey, I would like to rent this, but we need to, we've had, your building's got some issues and things need to get addressed and give some time for them to maybe address it versus saying a downright no. That's what I'm thinking about at the moment. I'm not sure if I'm going to offer that motion or if someone else will offer that motion to table it. That's right. But I don't know that I could support at this present time, given the issues that are going on with the property as a whole. So, thank you.
Are you new to car sales in general, or is this-
Yeah, I'm just new to it, and then, yeah, that's why I thought, I was like, maybe they'll clean it up, and then, I don't know why one person's gotta, get punished for that,
So I noticed recently, based on the LLC, like this LLC was previously titled as JJ's Toys, Trucks,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Trailers.
I was trying to find a place for it, and I thought I found a couple places, but.
But it's not a new application, like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
LLC's been
yeah.
there for quite a while.
Yeah, it's been there for a while.
But you haven't actually actively
haven't-
used that
haven't
LLC to
actually used it
actually
yet.
do this type of business?
Yeah, I've been looking for quite a long time.
As far as outside storage, unless I'm missing it, but I don't believe the condition limits. You guys read that the condition would limit how many cars could be outside? I don't believe it does. And I guess with that, would you be opposed to us adding that as a condition?
Yeah.
You would be opposed?
No, I think there's 5 spots that you could put there, and then,
I mean, if that was added as a condition, no more than 4
Yeah.
or 5
Yeah.
outside cars,
yeah,
you'd be okay with that?
yeah, I'd be okay with that.
Okay.
Are those spots, just based on the picture, would those spots, so you start to talk about if emergency response vehicles had to respond there, fire lanes, things like that, are those 5 spots, like, would that be off the pavement where some of that stuff is? Is it
That'd be right
directly
in-
in front of?
Right in front of the building. There's 5 spots right in front of there.
And they don't obstruct the
No,
overhead
don't
door?
obstruct.
Okay.
Would that, so I'm just trying to picture it just based on my knowledge of the area. So would that be like cars too deep, or there's 5 single car spots?
Single cars.
Really? Okay.
And I think he misspoke. They do obstruct
Yeah.
Oh,
Ma'am,
yeah,
if you want to speak, you can come up to the podium as well, yes. Just state your name and address for the record.
I'm Jennifer Keating at the same address that he's at. The 5 spots do obstruct the overhead door. Just to kind of give some background, we had a.
Whoa, back up a second, you said they
They
do?
do obstruct the front door. So in order to qualify for a dealer's permit, you have to have at least 5 outdoor spots. And so when we came across this property, we realized it would meet that requirement. But his plan is to have the majority of the cars indoors. And so even though there's 5 spots outside, he's not anticipating using all 5 spots. Given the nature of the location of this business, we don't expect that people will be out driving around, stopping to look at vehicles. It's primarily going to be an online presence and then appointments made to come see vehicles when he's at the property. The plan is that the business would be at this location if the conditional use permit is approved for a temporary amount of time until he can find something that's more suitable as a traditional car lot. To kind of give more background to we had formed the LLC about 10 years ago, and then I had gone back to school, and so his plans to start this business was just put on hold for the last 10 years, and now that I'm done with school, then he wanted, was looking forward to move forward with it, but now just limiting it to the vehicles, because he was looking at trailers previously. Part of the reason that we would want to keep most of the vehicles inside is because of the significant decrease in insurance. We wouldn't have to get hail coverage if they're inside. And anybody that knows Jeremy knows that he's very financially conservative. So starting this as a new venture, he wants to keep it as, risk-free as possible. And then, as we talked with Toby before the meeting, the plan would be this would just be a temporary location, and then once the business gets going, moving to a more traditional car lot.
Thank you. So one question, and you had mentioned it. So in order to get your dealer's license, you need the 5 outdoor spots?
5 spots.
Okay. How many, so I'm assuming the dealer's license people, they aren't gonna care what the conditions say. You got the spots, right? How many spots could you use and not obstruct the overhead door? 3?
Yeah, 3.
Okay.
4.
Yeah.
I think our minds are in the same place on this one, but yeah.
And I think,
So let me ask you that question. Would you be opposed to having that as a condition, 3 outside spots?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
yeah, as long as it doesn't invalidate his ability to get the dealers. I think to get the dealer's license, there just has to be 5 spots available. You don't have to have those spots filled,
Yep.
but all
Yeah,
along the
right.
plan was.
Yeah, I guess that's where my mind's thinking.
Right, all along the plan was he's planning to start very small, 10,
Yep.
8, 10 cars, and the majority of those would be inside because there
Yep.
likely wouldn't be hail coverage.
And am I right, Toby, if this is granted to these folks, it can be transferable to somebody else, or no?
Yeah, it would stay with that unit number 10,
Yeah.
but they would have to meet the conditions of what you
Right.
put on it. So.
So that's the other thing, we're just, when we do this, we have to think about that, is that, hopefully your business goes awesome, and a year or 2 from now, you move on and you got your dream place. But whatever we decide tonight's gonna stick with that, and we could get somebody that maybe isn't as easy, you know what I'm saying? Somebody that comes along and then we have problems with. So, although we are thinking about you individually as the applicant, we also have to think about the ramifications of the property moving forward too. And so that's why we're asking a lot of questions, if that's okay.
Do you currently have your dealer's license?
No,
We have to
you
get-
gotta place a spot to get the
Okay.
dealer's
We have to
license.
get this
so-
in
But you've
place.
already leased this?
Yeah, at least.
Okay.
You've signed the lease on this already?
Yeah.
But it's conditioned on getting
Oh,
a conditional use
conditional.
permit as well as a dealer's
Okay,
license,
good.
and so, yeah. No,
The
we're-
unique situation about this property is the building receives its conditional use permit to be oversized in the first place. It should be held to a certain standard, and it's not being. At least, from what we see, it's not adhering to it. I don't know, this is a tough one. Yeah, we penalize you and an applicant per se, and maybe not approving it. But if that unit would stay empty, I think the property owners would maybe get an idea that what it takes to get a building full is to keep it into shape and keep it into the perspective of what property should be. You know, it's a hard situation, and as the chairman had indicated, the commission, which I'm one of them, do not give the planning and zoning staff to go out and try to enforce these rules. We hope people would follow them. So it would make it easy for everyone like yourself to come. So it's not us as a board that's maybe punishing you, but the property owner or the management company, whoever's in charge of making sure things are met to a certain standard, are not doing their job. Because if the property, from what I'm hearing and what I believe, if the property would not have these issues, I think you would be approved relatively easily. So don't look at this board or hopefully not this board as the ones that are saying no if they say no. It's because the property isn't, you know, in the condition that it needs to be. So, thank you.
Yeah, and when we did talk with the property manager about this, he said that he was having conversations along with knowledge that the county was having concerns with that particular owner. And while, you know, we had the same concerns that you guys have, I want to remind you that the other occupants of the property are in compliance. It's one tenant that's having difficulty complying with the conditions.
Your testimony is that all the other vehicles are because of one operator in that complex?
Yeah. Yep, the unit, so there's 4 units on the north side. The unit immediately to the east is a woodworker that does all of his business indoors, and then the unit immediately to the west is empty at this time, to our knowledge.
That's all, where all the vehicles belong to?
Nope, that one would be to the east. So Unit 8 is the first unit that you come to when you drive into the property where all the vehicles are at. So that one has
Be in the northeast corner of that building.
exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's the unit that's responsible for they're also a car dealer, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
As far as,
They're a car dealer, but I believe that they primarily, based on our view of it, that they're primarily dealing with repairable and salvage
Gotcha.
vehicles, which would not be his intention at all.
Yep. Okay.
Toby, would you be willing to share if that unit is under a conditional use permit presently?
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
sorry, what was the question?
What was the numbers?
Unit 8.
8. Unit 8.
Is that under a conditional use permit currently?
Yes, it does have an active conditional use permit on it, yes.
Okay.
Is it under review?
It's under compliance right now,
It's under compliance, right?
as the applicant stated. But it's an active compliance, so I'm not going to comment
Yep.
anymore beyond that.
Gotcha.
so. Okay, all right.
So it looks
Toby,
like
with that-
There should have been more conditions.
Not talking about active compliance, but with it, Mr. Chair, if I can.
Yeah.
Are these the same conditions that were placed on the applicant for the other one, or are those substantially different than the conditions placed, recommended conditions placed on this one?
I'd say generally the same, but a little bit tighter. Yeah.
Thank you, Toby.
Toby, I do have one question too, though, on, again, so these 5 spots for parking, what does that do 3 or 5 or whatever would be for the vehicles, does that do anything with parking for, obviously, customers parking there? Is there X amount of spots that have to be for customers to park, or no?
Yes, yes. That's, again, what makes the site difficult for that type of a use. But, you know, depending on what the other areas are and things like that. I mean, you know, we're actively working with the property owner and the applicant for Unit 8 to identify. You are aware that we do have quite a few of these that they do allow what I'll call shared parking spaces. So typically, there's agreements that are filed in our office that allow tenants to utilize other parking spaces on the site. So that's all part of this too, but But again, originally, this building wasn't built for this type of a use, but again, as the applicants testified, they intend to keep everything inside, which those are large units. It's 2,500 some square feet of a unit, so.
What would be your recommendation for number of customer parking spots?
I think staff was comfortable with the site plan that was submitted showing the 5 spots, so I would.
But
leave
if they
it at that.
had vehicles for sale in them, then there wouldn't be anywhere for the customer.
Well, typically in these, they might have shared parking spaces too.
Sure.
We'll go through that process with the applicant.
So if we had a condition of 3 outside cars for sale, that would leave them 2 spots for customers. Do you think that would be sufficient for your recommendation or your staff?
I'd say if they just keep stuff in 5 spots, we'll be okay, so.
Right, because they would be on site. There's 1, a customer by appointment, however that works. There's 2, and then 3, like that. You know.
Again, I understand what that is. We kicked that around internally, but I think 5 is sufficient for what they're showing. It's, if we start getting stuff outside of those spots, then we're gonna have an issue. And we've told them that.
Are you concerned about the obstruction of the overhead door?
No,
No.
no.
Okay. All right. So at this time, anybody else in favor of the application, could they come forward? Okay, seeing none. Anybody in opposition of the application, would they like to come forward? Okay, seeing none, we will close the floor to public comment and entertain a motion.
For comment, I'll make a motion to approve with the existing conditions.
I'll second that to further discussion.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second, so now we'll move on to discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So I've been keeping my comments till this section. Couple looks great, and I don't have any doubt of their interest, but I was part of the last rezone, and yeah, I regret that one. And I just don't feel that this area is right for that type of business. Car sales, contractor shops, yes, there's just too much going on out there. Again, I think about security, I think about fire, I think about all that, and I honestly just don't think this is the right location for this type of business. I know they're hard to find and 100% sympathize, but we have to do what's right. And after this nice young couple leaves and moves on, as successful and makes millions, that contractor still be his own for somebody else come in to car sales or whatever is in there. And that's why I look at long-term. So I'm going to deny or vote no for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Jungling. Anyone else?
So I think the hard part that I have is looking at it, seeing the right of way of 93rd Street, right? So if 93rd Street was actually there, we're really looking at, say this was on the other side of the building between 2 buildings, like there's not space to be able to do that. I think my mind's playing tricks on me. I'm like, oh, well, there's room, but there's really not because there's a right of way there. And who's to say what's going to happen, if they were to come through and build that street, or if, somebody wants to develop right on the other side of that right of way, at that point, you're really out of space. So that's where I'm still undecided, honestly, on this one. Because of the couple. I think that, putting off what you did to now finally realize that this is coming to hopefully fruition for you. I appreciate that. I don't know. We'll see based on other comments how I don't know.
Can I ask one question?
Unfortunately, we're not right now, no, now that we're into this. The motion's been made and seconded, and I apologize, but yeah.
Mr. Chairman, as I've looked at this tonight and thought about it, you know, there's no doubt I believe this couple means to do the very best for their business and for the area. The problem comes in is we allowed an oversized structure on a lot, which didn't leave much extra space for outside parking. We allowed one business to go in to sell cars, and I'm sure when they presented their story of what they were going to do, it sounded like they were going to be for the best interest. This property just does not lend itself to this type of operation. A contractor shop where everyone's going to keep everything inside is what it's built for. You know, unfortunately, I'm going to have to vote no as well. Not going against the individuals, but that the property just doesn't fit what they're trying to do there. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Poppins. Anybody else? Go ahead, Ms.
One more thought, and I didn't mention this before, but again, with their shop full of cars and then the 5 spots outside full, when they rearrange or something happens, again, there's going to be issues outside with space and parking and rearranging, and again, I just don't feel like it's the right spot.
So yeah, unfortunately, you guys, I wish there was more property available for you, because this one just, I'm in agreement with the commissioners. I think, you know, again, we're trying, if we were gonna do something, and I was kicking around the idea of, you know, maybe making a motion to add some conditions so that we limit the parking outside and really try to make this work for you guys. But the more I think about it, it's, you know, maybe the property isn't there for you right now that's available. But I sure think it will be. And you'll probably find a better place than this, that more suits your needs. And then we won't have had to done something that's gonna follow this property forever. And I guess that's the thing that I keep going back to is, if we approve this permit and we can condition it to death, we can put all sorts of conditions on it, but it's gonna go with to the next person. You see what I'm saying? And so we have to make that decision and make that many exceptions just to try to make something work for the short time. I guess I just get the feeling that, well, if we gotta make all these, if we gotta make a bunch of exceptions, try to make something work, it probably wasn't, unfortunately, it's probably, this particular area isn't suited for what you guys are wanting to do. And I feel really bad for you, because I think, you know, the little bit I've got to hear, you're great people, you got a passion for something and you want to do it, and I get that. I don't think they'd let me raise Hereford bulls there either, and that's my passion. So, you know, you just gotta go find a spot that I think will work better for you folks. And so unfortunately, I'm not gonna be able to support it either tonight. Anything else? No? Anything down there, guys?
My last statement that I'll be is, you know, this is the whole point where when one makes a mistake, and it's not you that made the mistake, and maybe it was us for allowing somebody else to take it, we're taking a chance on them. They've messed it up for other people. If they had kept it within the parameters of what they were supposed to, we wouldn't have to face that. But again, as we said, we don't have the resources to go out and patrol these things and enforce these things and the time and the money to do that. When it didn't work once, we can't do it again, because that's kind of repetitive, unfortunate behavior. This property, by the actions of the first individual or individuals, it's proven that it's not a good site for this. So I encourage you to keep looking. I know it is difficult, but if it's something you really want to do, you're not gonna get a no later because of what you are or what you want to do. You just got to find the right property. So good luck. And again, we haven't voted yet, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And one last comment, I will say too, in just the short time I've been here, there's been a few instances like yours where good people come and they want to do these types of things, and it's just in an area that doesn't work, right? And it's fun then 2, 3, 4 months later, they come back and they found an area that really works, and 9 times out of 10, or most times, it's an area that's much better than the one that they originally looked for, so, you guys keep looking, again, we haven't voted yet, but if it doesn't pass, keep looking, and, we'll, hopefully you can come back. So, with that, any other comments? Okay, I'll call the roll. Mr. Green, Commissioner Green.
Of course, you had to start with me.
I should mix it up.
No.
Commissioner Boots.
Yeah. Nay.
Commissioner Poppins. Commissioner Jungling. Commissioner Sweeter.
It's a hard decision. But I'm going to vote no.
Okay. Commissioner Scott, unfortunately, I'm also a no. So good luck to you guys. Again, hopefully find something that suits you better, and we get to see you back here in a couple months. That'd be great.
And it's
So,
just a recommendation. They can appeal to the commission.
again, yes, it is a recommendation. You can appeal to the county commission. And if you want to go through that process, just talk to Mr. Brown and he'll tell you how to do that. So, thanks, guys.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Before we start this next great, awesome presentation, can we take a break for a second?
Yeah. Yep. I don't know if we got to move for that, but yeah, let's take a break. All right, we're back in session here, and we're moving on to new business. We're going to get a presentation from the State's Attorney's Office, Conflict of Interest presentation.
Thank you, Commission. This came to our brains about a year ago when State's Attorney Woolman was approached by a member of the public about putting something together for our boards to review. Things have been busy recently, but for the same reasons, we've decided it's good for us to bring this before you and possibly before the commission as well. And in reviewing these cases, I'll just start off by saying that I think it's important to note that through the cases and the examples I'm about to present, I don't think anyone necessarily has nefarious or criminal mindsets when they do some of these things, and that's why it's important to review some of this case law and really see possibly just some of the random things that pop up that maybe need to be in the back of your minds. And so it's not to point anyone else specifically, and it's not to point fingers, but like I said, as you'll see in some of these examples, you just need to take a step back sometime. But we'll begin with actually the third slide. And this is going to be basically your mindset, or this board's mindset, is whether you are sitting in a rulemaking position or a quasi-judicial position. And as you'll see on slide number 3, for the large majority of the decisions that this board is going to face, you should consider yourself in a quasi-judicial position only because you are making decisions based on private property, and that's what zoning decisions inherently affect. And that's when this board will invoke due process rights. And that's the mindset that you need to have. And so the standard that the courts have told us is that this board needs to be disinterested and free from bias or predisposition of the outcome. Whereas when you're in a rulemaking position, you are going to establish policies in the future. And as this board knows, that happens a little more infrequently, but we just did that recently with a future rulemaking position. And the standard for that is clear and convincing of an unalterably closed mind on matters critical to the disposition of the proceeding. So that's a little bit of a higher standard of proof just because it doesn't necessarily invoke due process rights. I won't go through every single quote on this page because you've reviewed the PowerPoint. But the other thing I wanted to point out is that the courts have said that you should not consider this a hyper-technical analysis. You shouldn't spend hours saying, how does this affect my decision-making? If it's a sour gut feeling, that's probably a bad sign, right? And so I just thought that was a good quote from the Armstrong court. And actually, that's a South Dakota case that I would recommend the board read just because it is a South Dakota case and it's pretty spot on for what this board should be considering, but I did like that quote. Going back to slide number 2 is the statutory requirements that are directly on point. Some of these things are not necessarily statutorily required, but these ones are, and one of those is direct pecuniary interests, and I think most of the board will know when that pops up, but just wanted to point out that statute for you. And then also the ability for 2/3 of a governing board to vote that an official has an identifiable conflict of interest. That's the other one that this board should be considering. The bottom third one I don't think is as specific for this board because it deals more with contracts that perhaps our commission will vote on. But going into the actual examples that I wanted to present to you is pecuniary interests. We'll start with that one. And one of those that I came across was an example where an Ohio replat was denied when members of the board were also a part of the homeowners association. And that decision got reversed because they had that pecuniary interest that they were trying to protect. I think that's a pretty clear example. Second one is an employment relationship. I found a case where a bartender was sitting on the commission, only bar in town. Guy wanted to open up a second bar kitty corner from that first bar. Guess how she voted? It's pretty clear, right? So I know these are somewhat direct on point examples, but these are the types of things we should be thinking of is her boss had a pecuniary interest. Hers was not necessarily pecuniary, but she knew her boss wanted to shut down that other bar. Family relationships. Simply put, there was a case out of Georgia where a mom actually got to sit on the board because she did disclose her interest for her son asking for a rezone. But because she did disclose that interest, she was able to vote on the matter and make clear that she had disclosed any possible biases that she had. Going down further, there's dual office holding. Actually, South Dakota AG's opinion said that you can't be a school board member and a commissioner at the same time recently. And then ex parte communication is communications outside of the interests of the commission itself. And I'll go a little bit further into this, but like as a couple people have said tonight, things like driving by a property that you know you're voting on isn't necessarily ex parte communication. But it's when you get a tour of a facility or something that you're about to vote on, that's when it rises to having a predisposition or a possible bias for the vote that you need to vote on the next week. So just know that you can't be negotiating behind the scenes. But as we've mentioned tonight, I mean, taking a look at a property and driving by and seeing how it's going, I don't think is going to be considered ex parte communications. So those are disqualifying interests. I'll bring you down to now just biases. And once again, I think these are relatively obvious, but this is the one case that I'll bring up that I think is a perfect example of you not necessarily trying to do anything nefarious. But there was a case out of Connecticut in which 2 commissioners were trying to vote on building baseball fields. Well, they also served on the local committee to maintain the local parks. And so they wanted their kids to have nice baseball fields to play on, that they had 2 sons that were that playing age. And so I don't think that was anything nefarious, but that did get sent back to them because they had such a predisposition to the outcome that the court said that that is a bias that the commission cannot have. The one other thing that I will say is that there is a direct quote, I think, from our South Dakota Armstrong case, is that you have to show that the opinion was formed prior to the hearing, where pre-hearing statements or decisions are fatal to the decision of the board. And that's what I was meaning by you guys driving by a facility or land that you're voting on. I don't think that's a predisposition to a vote. It's about learning more information. Now, if you talk to the property owner and talk to him and say, hey, man, what's going on with these conditional uses that we could maybe bring up, that's when you're going to start to raise some eyebrows, and I think this board should consider staying away from those types of acts. And finally, I'll just say the good faith and fairness and public agency abuse is, there was another case from Connecticut in which members were missing key meetings in which there was public input and things like that, and that vote was sent back because they had missed these key meetings in which public input should inform the board, and because of that, it was a fatal mistake for the commission to vote on that matter. So I would just advise you to try and be present at these meetings and to hear the public input. It will not inherently be fatal, but we've seen that courts have sent back votes based on these types of fatal mistakes. And finally, on the last slide, I will just bring you a couple more quotes that I found interesting and insightful for this board to consider. If you want me to send you any of the cases that I've found on this, I'd be happy to email it out to this commission if you would like to read it further. Once again, I think they're just random examples in which this board can consider how I would act in the future and make my decisions. So unless the board has any other questions, that's all I had tonight.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Go ahead. So we have recently been presented with, I think, last meeting where the general public comes up and asks members to recuse themselves. We had one at the Joint Planning Commission meeting with the City of Sioux Falls last week, and then we had one in this committee meeting last month. So in the handling of that, just to make sure that we understand, even though there may be, a member of the public that gets up and automatically asks somebody to excuse themselves, it's not the public's choice, right? It is the manner of the individual maybe being asked to recuse themselves, right? It's their thought process on whether or not they feel they are impartial, correct? Like that's.
I think that was very well said, and I don't know if I could say anything better than that. I think you phrased it perfectly, that it's not the public's decision, it's the decision maker's personal identifying feelings for that matter, so.
And it isn't anything, I mean, and the other members of the board really don't play a part in that
That's where I was
either, do
confused, because
they?
there's also a 2/3 vote one of the governing
Yeah.
body, which confused me a little bit.
So I need to go back, to be honest, I don't have our entire statutory code memorized, but I think this is more based on contractual, 6-1 is contractual obligations within the county itself, if I remember correctly. So I can get this board a response on that specific statute. I don't think it inherently matches your ability, but I do believe it's a talking point that this commission can always have amongst itself.
But in a situation where, say, somebody on the board feels like somebody else should recuse themselves and they don't, there isn't really a call to order or anything from that board member that would call for a vote, and we could ask that person to recuse themselves. It hasn't happened, I'm just curious.
I would advise this board that you always have the ability to go into session
I
and
see.
talk amongst
And
itself.
do it there. Yep.
And discuss those types of things. I do agree with you that it would probably be improper to vocalize them outside of that type of environment.
Yep.
Or to the extent that it's meant to demean that person's vote.
Right.
I would advise against that, but.
So while I appreciate that, my understanding, and not a legal opinion whatsoever, but in order to be able to enter executive session, which we normally don't have, is it has to be on the agenda, right? So, so for us, we don't inherently have executive session on the agenda, not as much so as the commission does when they meet, right? It's, but, I don't know if that's something we need to consider. I don't think, the opportunity for us to go into executive session is I think significantly rare, but for us to do it, it has to be on the agenda.
I did
that-
not know that statute. I will
And
have
I
to
don't
learn
know
that
yet.
myself either, but
Yeah, somebody
I
had
was
just mentioned it.
I was of the mindset that anytime this governing board decides it needs to go into executive session, it could, but I'll go learn that myself.
Joe,
Yeah.
if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, because
And again, I could be wrong.
Interested.
Joe, Mr. Meter is the third attorney that I've worked with to guide me in what I should and to be doing at times. And they're still trying to find enough attorneys to throw at me that maybe I'll listen. But if I probably am wrong, but I believe the reason why we put it on the executive, in case there is going to be action after the executive session, we have to have it on the agenda. I think you can
think
go
that-
in the executive session to discuss something, but you cannot come out of that afterwards and take action on something.
I think that's a fair statement of what I understand the law to be.
Yeah.
I will say that you've heard a synopsis of what has been directed to me over and over again. The one thing that I've really, I think became surprised by was initially, and I get criticized because I don't want to, I'm not willing to go look at things and talk to people on site, is what we just talked about tonight. The general public weren't invited to that, and they've got then a special opportunity to plead their case. And the courts say that's not correct. Fortunately, we have not had a situation that anybody's, I believe, challenged us on that ever, but I do believe if we go to an event, this is my belief, I adhere to what Joe has said tonight and the other attorneys have said to me, is if we go, we let the applicant or the one in opposition by themselves, without the general public there, we are now getting a preconceived bias before the actual public hearing, and that is.
And I appreciate that statement because that would be the one thing I do reiterate is that I think the public hearing itself has kind of lost its muster, and that's really what it's meant to be, is that public hearing is meant to be the one and only time this board hears that information. And so I appreciate Commissioner Poppins saying that because that is what a lot of the case law you see reiterates is that, this needs to be where you hear everything. And that predisposition or bias or pre-made mindset is some of the things that they argue against, so.
That makes sense, yeah. And it was probably on here, but I think Toby I had a question on one that I had to recuse myself from. And I believe the law said something about benefiting from financially. That's a pretty predetermined time you would exit, correct?
That pecuniary interest, I would say,
that's
is
what
probably number one on the
Number
list
one.
that you need to, that gut feeling, once again, anytime you feel like you have any pecuniary interest in the matter, I think that's probably the most easily visible to not only yourself, but the public as well, so.
Okay. That's what we thought, or that's what I thought. But, yeah. Good. Any other questions?
So I just wanted to add something to what we talked about, and something that I want to talk about is, so if you notice, we've been placing photos of the property onto the presentations as well. So there really shouldn't be any need to go onto the site to get a view of that. The other thing I would point out is, per the bylaws, staff is required to place that agenda together 5 days before this meeting. So typically, like the Board of Commissioners, they're about a 24, 48 hour posting of it. But you have this a whole week prior to the meeting, so there should be enough time. And if there is a question about some of that, we can take additional pictures and things like that. But as we're trying to do is, the hearing should be here. What you see, what you hear, all that stuff is there. And I think we're doing a better job of getting the pictures on there. The aerial photography, again, is a year or two out of date. So there's a little bit of there, but some of the properties are still the same. But I think we're doing a better job of getting that stuff on there. Other than that, that's the only comment that I would have on that part of it. So
Yeah,
thank Joe.
and that's a good point, Toby, and just to, I guess what you're cautioning us to, I think, is if we want to go out and look at the property, fine, but be careful that we aren't letting that
Bias us.
make up our mind when we're driving by it, and maybe it'd be best even if we didn't do it and just took the staff report and the pictures.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
The challenge you get is even when we go on site, somebody comes out, hey, what are you doing here? What's going
Right.
on? What do you see here and stuff like that. And if you recall, one of our former chairs a couple before routinely went on site, but then would routinely also talk to people on site. And I think it gets you in a position where you don't want to be doing that.
Right.
The other part is just thanks State Attorney's Office for putting this together. It's informational, it's educational, it's just something we always need. My understanding is they're going to take it to the Board of Commissioners would be the next step with that process. So.
Toby, if I may, briefly, it doesn't mean you cannot get prepared.
Right.
You need to review the statute, know what the things that are going to be pertinent to that topic, whatever. Absolutely, you can research that all. You just can't use that resource of the applicant or someone that's in opposition to it to give you the source. Talk to the staff, reread our subdivision ordinance, reread our subdivision ordinance or whatever. Be prepared so that when the testimony comes in, you know what is pertinent, what isn't pertinent to that topic. But and again, I don't stress it to my I haven't stressed it to this board. I definitely don't stress it to my commissioners. It's their decision how they want to conduct their business. But I get criticized over and over again for not being willing to go talk to an applicant or something. But this is the reason why I must maintain being unbiased until both parties had a chance to come and present their case, so.
Well, and what I would add to that too is that the staff report is there. We analyze all the things that you should be analyzing. If there's something we're not, and you want more of, or there's ways, I've said that to you guys routinely, if there's things you would more to in the staff report. But, we take that seriously, and we're one of the only, we're only the departments that give a recommendation, right? I mean, we tell you yes, no, what you should do with these too. So I think make sure you're reading the staff reports, but if there's things we can add to it, take away from it, but we'll certainly do that too, so. But again, I thank State's Attorney's Office for taking the time to do that, because I think it's necessary for all bodies, so, okay?
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Meter. Appreciate it. All right. So number 2 on new business, Toby?
Yep, just a couple things under there. So the first thing is no decisions by the Board of Commissioners since your last Planning Commission meeting. The item that you forwarded was the zoning ordinance or the Code of Ordinances text amendment. The first reading of that will be on the 25th, and that's just a first reading. They don't take public comment. The second reading, public hearing will be on August 1st at the Board of Commissioners. And then just wanted to, as you are aware, but the public might be aware, is our chair did resign. So we do have a vacancy in District 1, and so I would thank Wendy Hogan for her service. Never like to see individuals leave early, but there's, certainly it happens. And then District 2 was just recently appointed. That's Marlene Sweeter. So she will be assuming the District 2 Planning Commission representative. So,
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. I can tell I have a lot to learn.
Will there have to be a vote then to backfill Eric's
Yeah.
vice chair?
So the third thing is we do have to have, Eric was the vice chair, so he assumed the chair position, so we'll need to have an election at the next meeting for vice chair. So I'll put that on the agenda to have an election for that. Second part of that is probably also on the agenda is we'll also be, we're proposing to make some amendments to the bylaws. So the first, really simply, is that there's been a request of some of you to do the Pledge of Allegiance, much like the Board of Commissioners does, but it's not really called out in the agenda, so we're going to add that. And then we do have 2 sets of bylaws for the Planning Commission. One would be the Joint Planning Commission, and the regular, what I'll call the regular Planning Commission, is the Lincoln County. There's 2 separate processes for public hearings in those bylaws. And so I like consistency, keep it the same. And so really what the better, I guess in my opinion, the better version of it would be the joint bylaws, where it just talks about we're just going to have public comment. It doesn't do a for and against and then rebuttals and all that kind of stuff. So it's very clear just to what it would be. And then I think we've also talked over the years about maybe putting a time limit on agenda items too, so that when they reach a certain point, it's not we're cutting it off testimony. We always want to encourage testimony, but it really just sets a policy in place so that everyone knows this is how long we're going to be talking about an agenda item. But certainly that'll be just a consideration for you guys at the next meeting, that we'll put together kind of a draft of that. You can approve it, talk about it, we can move on from there. So, but tend to do that probably at the next meeting. So I think that's all I really had for staff updates, unless there's any questions that you have for us. Okay, so the third item is the comprehensive plan update. So the 2 parts to that is, first part is Robin Dykstra, who is the manager of Lincoln County Rural Water System, is here tonight. If you recall, we did, I believe 2 or 3 months ago, we did have South Lincoln Rural Water, their manager, do a presentation just on kind of growth and needs and some of those things. The rural water is an important partner. Again, in Lincoln County, we're not a service provider. We don't provide water, sewer, or wastewater, storm sewer, and those different types of things. So our partners with rural water are important, because that's what makes buildings usable, livable. So he graciously volunteered to come tonight and do a presentation, and I do have his slides here, but you're gonna have to find out which one you want, so, on that part, so. Whichever one you got, click on.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Toby. Good evening. I'm Robin Dykstra. As Toby said, I've worked for Lincoln County Rural Water for about 17 years now. So we will go to this one. I think that's final. I did see Tom's when he came up to do his presentation, and well, there we go. There we are. I don't know if you have this on your own computers too or not, but I put this together after Toby invited me to come to this, to their meeting tonight. I didn't realize it was gonna be one of the last things in the agenda, but such it is. My wife's not home anyway. So I'm the manager. Our assistant manager was coming along. His name is Andrew Craig. We were down to about a mile, actually to the Worthing exit, when we got a call that one of the contractors for the communication lines hit us again. So this time was a 6-inch line. We're incorporated as a nonprofit corp in September of 1971. We're not affiliated with Lincoln County, the government. A lot of people think we are, but we are a 501c12 is what we are incorporated as a nonprofit. Governed by a 7-person board of directors. Original construction was from 1971 to 73 with about 300 memberships. We started delivering water in January of 1973, and our present membership is about 2,084 members. I should just start at the slideshow. Northern boundary is Riverview Road and South Dakota Highway 42 on the northeast corner. Then we go down around the municipal limits of Sioux Falls to 57th Street and T. Ellis Road. We do have customers within the city limits of Sioux Falls yet that Sioux Falls hasn't taken over for different reasons, but Old Yankton Trail, part of that is on our system yet. 57th Street, what we call Gazina and Emery, that's on our system yet. Our southern boundary is located at approximately 276th Street, Klondike, where we border with our sister rural water system, South Lincoln Rural Water. The east edge of our system is the Big Sioux River, and Highway 17 is the west edge of our system. Now we kind of step away from Highway 17 as we go south, but it's just easier to use those as coordinates or dimensions. The purpose was to deliver treated water to farms and acreages for domestic use. From 1973 to 2012, Sioux Falls, actually we had water rights in the Sioux Falls well fields. Sioux Falls would draw our water from the wells, treat it, and deliver it back to us at our reservoirs that were at 61st and Cliff Avenue. And then over the years, we've had bulk delivery agreements with T and Harrisburg. Then in August of 2012, we started receiving water from the Lewis and Clark Regional Water System. T receives all of its water from Lewis and Clark. Harrisburg gets water from Lewis and Clark and approximately 50,000 a day from us. Then Harrisburg also has other agreements with other Lewis and Clark members. We presently have a daily capacity of 1.54 million gallons per day from Lewis and Clark. And Lewis and Clark is looking at doing a 15 MGD upsize. That will probably be done within the next 10 to 12 years. We've signed up for our increase, and that'll bring us up to 2.437 million gallons a day. We are also members of a new regional water system called the Dakota Main Stem. And that's, I don't know if Troy Nelson's ever been, or Troy Larson's been here to talk about that, but that's another system that's kind of in its very initial stages of what's going on. The staff and board of directors are cognizant of the future growth potential and demands of the area and are trying to plan accordingly. In October of 2008, Lincoln County Rural Water, Sioux Falls, T, and Harrisburg signed an agreement outlining permanent water service territories for all 4 entities. And since that time, we've been forward thinking and planning and preparation for growth in our service territory. We started we have constructed large diameter water mains that serve what we expect to be high density areas, such as the area west of Harrisburg near the Adventure Elementary School. We are constructing and planning to construct water mains sufficient in size to deliver what we call string developments or rural subdivisions. And we are in the engineering phase to construct large diameter water mains along 85th Street to South Dakota Highway 11. And then we'll turn south along Highway 11 to go to 272nd Street with this project. We call this phase 1 of our East Side Improvement Project, and we received some ARPA funding to help with this project. We're still hopeful that Lincoln County may find some funds for us to help out there.
Sorry, got something in my throat.
In 2022, we constructed an 8-inch water main to the Lakeview Estates to help with demands in that development. We plan to construct additional main lines near the new Long Meadows development. The East Side Improvement large diameter water mains will connect to these smaller main lines. The mains we're talking about on 85th Street is 16-inch. The main that we're looking at on Highway 11 is a 12-inch. We're realistic to know that we cannot deliver fire flow to many areas in our service territory. And I believe fire flow is a moving number. And then I put in white because it's a little harder to really calculate it out. But our intentions are to try to help the local fire departments by installing fire hydrants around our system that they can connect to for filling tender trucks. I believe Lincoln County Rural Water, the municipalities, and Lincoln County can work together to establish areas that we can deliver high volumes of water over longer periods of time. We all realize some areas will be more advantageous over others to encourage development. Truth is, many people want to live within municipal boundaries, but there are others who prefer more space of the open acreage areas. This is where and why rural subdivisions are needed. And we're working with the developers for Prairie Acres located west of T. This development has approximately 64 lots. We're working with Long Meadows that has about 30 lots. Working with another one that's called Brandbu, and that's at about 269th and 480th, and that was 25 more lots. Pretty simple. Here is the exhibit that went with the 2008 agreement with the cities of T, Sioux Falls, and Harrisburg. All the green is the dark green, the dark yellow or orange, and the dark blue were city limits at the time of the agreement. The light green is the 2035 growth plan for the city of Sioux Falls. And the darker yellow was the area that T picked out as the area they wanted to be their permanent service territory, and the blue is what Harrisburg shows out. The yellow is Lincoln County Rural Water. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Robin.
You're welcome.
Just a couple questions. You had mentioned fire flow. Can you explain that a little bit more?
That's where I say it's a moving number. I looked it up, the definition of fire flow, and it's fairly complicated. I've been talking a little bit with Andrew Petrus at City of Harrisburg. ISO comes out, that's the insurance, I can't remember what the initials are, but anybody with the fire department understands what that is. We know the area that we have west of Harrisburg is definitely, we can provide fire flow. We got 12 and 16-inch mains over there is what we're doing, and we plan to build more as the city limits come out. But, they talk about I know this goes on the record of whatever I say, so I have to be really careful what I say to you. So that's a man better qualified than me to give you the definition of what fire
Sure,
flow is.
yeah,
It's just what our intention is really is to try to get enough water going to these hydrants that we have on decent-sized water mains so that a tanker truck can hook up to it with a fill tower or something that'll help with fighting fires in a rural area, rural setting. is what we're
Because
really trying to
currently in like these rural development areas, that is a concern, correct? I mean, they don't
It is.
have the fire hydrants for, you know, and those types of things just locally, right? So everything's got to be trucked in.
Not everything. In Lakeview, the second part of that one, we didn't realize they were gonna grow that one as large as they did.
Okay,
The first part of the development, the phase one or whatever they did, were smaller mains. The second part, we told them they had to put 6-inch mains in.
okay.
And
And
there
so
are
then you can
hydrants.
support like a fire hydrant
There are
system?
hydrants out there, yeah.
Okay.
And we have that 8-inch that ran to it. Now the new 12-inch will connect to that 8-inch, and eventually we'll have a 8-inch squaring the mile of Highway 11 to 479th and 106 south to 272nd. We'll have 8-inch all the way around that section, so that will give adequate flows to definitely fill those tanker trucks
Sure.
to be able to help with fighting fires out there.
Well, that's good. One of the, or I guess I got two other questions quick. So explain to me what's gonna happen, in these rural development areas, like I'm thinking like the one around, up north, you know, around Lake Alvin where the old golf course was and so forth.
Okay.
So what happens if a municipality comes, you know, when those things become a municipality? Will those houses stay hooked up to your system, or will they have to switch over to Harrisburg's water or Sioux Falls, or?
And that goes back to
or
the
maybe we
map
don't know.
that I was showing you. Right here, the Spring Creek is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That is right, I believe, right here.
Yep.
That is ours to serve until we give it up. So they can't take it away from us. And I could see the day when we're running out of water, someone else may be able to take it. You know, the biggest or the best candidate would be the city of Sioux Falls.
Sure.
I don't think Harrisburg's gonna ever have more water than us unless they really find something somewhere.
Sure.
You know, I don't know, they have no reason to go that far, jumping over Harrisburg to get it, but Sioux Falls has got the biggest option to get there.
So if these people that you're serving, if they do end up getting annexed into a municipality, they would still stay on your system?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
They'll get water from Lincoln County Rural Water, and sewer will be provided by
Okay.
whatever municipality is there.
And you've got arrangements with the city of Sioux Falls or whoever, how that's gonna work?
That goes back to this agreement that we talk about here.
Yeah, okay. And then the last one, I know when Tom was here, he got asked the question, and I thought it was interesting. I hadn't thought of it, I guess, or it hadn't come up, but about sprinkler protection for some of these commercial type buildings. And that, well, it seemed to be something that they were unable to provide currently. What's your guys'
And-
position on that?
It's a good question, because really, it's easier to provide water flow for a building that's got sprinkler in it than to provide water for fire hydrants to put the fire out from the top down. So the capacity needed is less. And again, that goes back to where we're gonna be looking to put those buildings to do that. Not everywhere in our system can we afford to do that, but you know,
Sure.
if we can work with the county to determine areas that we could do that, it would be beneficial to both of us, I think, or all of us.
And that would be something that you think your system's capable of doing?
We have some areas that are better candidate for it than
Sure.
other.
Yeah, okay. So have you been, with the comprehensive plan stuff then, have you been part of those discussions on,
Sorry to say I have not.
you haven't?
No, I have not.
Well, we should get you there.
And Toby's invited me, I just haven't.
Oh, okay.
So it's not Toby's fault.
Yeah, yeah. We were just having, yeah, you know, I think about like, well, we talked about two of them tonight, kind of two areas, you know, that up around the T exit. And there's getting to be a lot of commercial and industrial type stuff there, and
Right.
I was just curious, I mean, like in those areas, what kind of fire protections could be provided, I guess?
Toby was surprised by something I told him the other day when, you know, he invites me to be part of the interdepartment meeting to discuss this before it comes here. And LG Everest and the Klinghagen property that you just talked about tonight We have a 12-inch water main that runs past that.
Oh, really?
Yes, we do. So we have a lot of flow that goes
So
through.
there's a lot
that
of
spot.
water there.
Yes,
That
Interesting.
runs east and west.
north and south.
That runs north and south. How far
Yep.
south?
274th. And then we have a 12-inch that runs halfway back towards Louise at 273rd. We plan to finish that loop probably within the 5-year plan is what we'd like to do with that.
So same question I asked Tom, and then this will be my last question. I
Okay.
apologize. But I just asked him when he was here, and first of all, thanks a lot for coming. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And we get a lot of requests for development, outside of the municipalities. And so is there anywhere in your system, in your area, where you would have a concern about commercial type businesses and growth that would bog your system down?
At this point, to be honest, we are weak. I'm going to pull up that same map. That's the only map I've really got. We're going to be weak north of Harrisburg. This whole blue area, we will not even put water mains in of decent size because there's no benefit to us long-term.
I see.
Just to the east of that, there's potential that we would be looking to put something in there.
But it isn't currently?
Pardon me?
But currently,
Well, we have that 12-inch that's coming down with this next project, should be done this next year.
Okay.
The 12-inch will come down to 272nd on Highway 11. And our hopes are to continue building that entire line, possibly someday have a backbone around our entire
just around
area.
your whole,
Correct.
yeah,
That is what we'd like to do. Again, everything costs money.
sure, yeah.
The area in between here, between T and Harrisburg, we call this our fire flow area. So I'll go back to that term fire flow, but this whole area. We have 16-inch main coming down Western Avenue and a 16-inch main that comes down Louise Avenue. And then that branches into 12-inch mains that we're slowly working our way south to plan to do the entire area here with 12-inch mains, 1 mile in center.
So that whole area between what I'd call the South T exit or the Harrisburg exit,
Yep.
the LG Evers thing, and Harrisburg, you've got a lot of good coverage in that
We
area.
plan to have really good coverage because we expect municipal growth in that
Correct.
city density type
Yeah.
stuff is what we expect.
Yep. What about the area northeast of T then, where all that commercial industrial type area is?
Northeast or northwest?
Northeast.
Northeast. Again,
Towards
we have
Sioux-
this
Yeah.
orange of T that we're not going to,
You don't, that isn't your deal.
that'll be T's to
Okay.
deal with because
Are you currently servicing it?
we are serving in there.
Okay.
And our lines are small, probably 1970s water mains.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
4-inch and that type of size is what we have.
So as
there
far
now.
as like that area, you don't plan on doing any improvements there because it's not going to be yours. That's going to be up to the city of T.
Correct.
Okay.
City of T and farther north, the city of Sioux Falls.
That's good to know.
The other area farther to the northwest, we have purchased property and future water tower may go in that area too, to help with that. And we have bought land for a second connection, Lewis and Clark over there. So
There's a
that's-
big Lewis and Clark Tower over there somewhere, isn't there? Or-
Their tanks are,
tanks or something?
yep, their tanks are gonna be a mile away from where we would put our
Okay.
tower, approximately.
Cool.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
the only question, Rob, I'm going to put you on, and we'll see if you like it or not, but here we go. So it's a crystal ball question.
Sure.
If our percentage of commercial users compared to residential users was to stay constant, how much growth percentage-wise of your capacity could you grow yet with your current supply that you have of water?
Right now, we have, our water restrictions we use now is no watering from 10 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock in the evening because it's pretty much a waste of water to try to water your lawns then. We, in the winter times, run about 400,000 gallons a day of our 1.5 million a day that we have capacity of. The school benefited us because they use water in the wintertime and don't use it in the summertime. Commercial would be likely to use it year-round, so they'd be a constant user of water versus most residential is high usage in summertime, low usage in wintertime. So I can't give you a number and percentage. I can't figure that out. I can just tell you where we're at now with the 2.3 that we're looking to have in possibly 10 years from now. I see ourselves sitting good for the next, probably 20 years, for sure. Again, that, if we all of a sudden blossom and grow to the city size.
Oh,
of
I
the
think
Twin
we've
Cities.
I think we're blossoming
But I mean
already.
exponential growth like
It's just,
Sioux Falls
it
and-
could be even exponential even more as we've hit certain
Could be.
levels of growth and population, then it catapults itself even to a higher level, which seems hard to believe, but that's what statistics are telling us, so.
Okay, and we look forward to it, as long as it's areas that, you know, we can provide for, and that is, again, the northern part of our system for the most part, whether it be the northwest or the northeast of the yellow areas that I'm showing you. As time goes on, then we'll build south, continue to go south with some of the larger mains, but that's what the plan is.
Is your system separate from South Lincoln's?
We are.
I mean, they aren't hooked together at all?
We have no interconnects between us. We have a place where we can feed emergency connection, but
Okay.
it takes a hose between the two systems
Okay.
to do it. So we have no interconnect with them.
It's changed a little bit since the 70s.
Changed a lot since the 70s. You know, it's,
I'm old enough just to remember when that was coming through our neighborhoods, our township roads, and literally it was farms only. And it's completely different now.
it is. It's, instead of having to get 1 acre, for me, I get easements. So instead of me having to get one easement over a quarter of land, I'm having to get 6 or 7 easements across
Sure.
lots to get through there instead.
Yeah, I bet it makes it harder to get your stuff through,
A
doesn't
little
it?
more of a challenge some days.
Yeah.
There's one easement I've been working on for over 2 years. But finally, I think
Oh,
I
I
got
think you've
it.
got easements that are a lot longer than that.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So yeah, we're still learning, we're still growing, we're still, we're happy to continue growing and serving the area.
Well, good. Well, anybody else?
Hope I didn't bore ya. Thank you.
No, we appreciate it, Robin. It's good information for us because, you know, obviously, the higher percentage of our applications are coming from the area you serve, right? So it helps us to understand if it's even possible or what, you know. The one thing we don't want to do is make decisions that's going to cripple, you know, anything, the utilities or anybody 10, 20 years down the road, and then you come down here and you say, well, dang it, why the heck did you guys do that? And now we can't service it, you know,
Yeah,
so.
that's true.
It's of high value to have you come down, and I sure appreciate you sticking around and doing it. I know everybody else does too. Yep. All right, with that, Mr. Brown, you got anything else?
Yeah, I just wanted to add too is that, so Robin mentioned it, I don't think we talked to you guys much about it, but we do an interdepartmental meeting is what we call it. But the week prior to the meeting, and lately I've had to switch it to Fridays, but we typically do it Thursdays. We invite every municipality in the county, Sioux Falls, everybody, all the way down to Hudson, Fairview. We invite our rural waters, we invite all the department heads in the building and things like that. Robin is consistently, he shows up at every meeting. And we allow it through Zoom too, so Robin participates through Zoom. But like you said, and like, that's something that I think we neglected over the years. We would just approve a development, and then they would go to Robin and say, well, I need water, and they would say,
Yeah.
well, you know. And I think something else that, what I also want to make a point too is that the issue we're dealing with now is fire suppression, which means that when I build a commercial warehouse building or something like that, based on the size, square footage, use of it, they more than likely might need fire suppression system in there. So if rural water can't provide it, rural water still provide the building with water, but we do require them to have some type of a tank or some type of a system that's built, and those are becoming very expensive to do. So that's one of the drawbacks to having commercial, industrial in areas that don't have the, what I'll call fire suppression or the water, the rate of water supply to handle those types of systems. Unfortunately, we don't learn about that up front very often. It kind of is after the fact, so.
So with that, I guess that was kind of the question I was asking, is the only area where you can provide that corridor between Harrisburg and T, what you call your fire flow area?
Not necessarily yet. You know, I hate to lock in on an answer, but the area that we're talking about also The area that we're talking about also that we're looking to do that, the East Side Improvement Project down Highway 11. That will also, whatever borders either side of Highway 11, eventually will all be able to be
We'll be
fed
able to.
with,
Yep.
for that type of
Okay.
delivery.
Yep.
And then the area that we're talking about with those 8-inch mains looping, that section at 271st to 272nd, Highway 11 to 479th, I would think anywhere in that section, we'd be able to do it too with the 8-inch. I need to confer with our engineer to confirm that, but you know, there's a lot of flow coming when you got two different directions bringing it with 8-inch mains.
Yeah.
So it's, and again, fire suppression in a building is easier to provide than fire flow through a tank or through a pumper truck.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, but that's good information, I think, for all of us, especially as we're going through the comprehensive plan so that we can design where those areas are. I mean, there's, makes good sense if we're gonna have commercially zoned areas that we can provide, or that you folks can
Yeah.
provide fire suppression.
Right, and that's the way we'd prefer it too, that.
Yeah, right.
It's easier to do it that
Make
way.
it easier.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think, and I think I almost fell out of my chair when he told me that La Valley does have fire suppression, or does have a 12-inch main coming there, because that makes property extremely valuable because of the availability. They would have to do fire suppression there. So that's something that I didn't even know that they did have. But last thing I have for you guys real quick is just a quick little session, work session, kind of comments on it. So again, we're in the process of updating the comprehensive plan. I didn't have the consultants come this evening, but they're planning to come next month to do some additional stakeholder meetings and do some updates with the Board of Commissioners as well. But as you're aware, we did meet 2 months ago in a work session, and the Planning Commission went through the future land use map, and I want to kind of go through a little bit of discussions with that. So I'll just start out with, this is the current, as you're aware, this is the current future land use map that's in effect in Lincoln County. So we've identified areas for urban expansion area, and those are essentially the growth areas of the municipalities, the joint jurisdiction area, and the agricultural area, which is the white or the non-colored area. And then we've identified rural, commercial, industrial areas. And as you guys are aware, that's just along certain exits of the interstate. That's a nodal type, what I'll call a nodal type area. So there isn't really, this is a mile out, a half mile, a quarter mile out. I know that we all have thoughts about what it could be, but essentially nodal allows us to look at different areas. What I would point out to you is that all of the growth areas and even the joint jurisdictional area with Sioux Falls has grown and changed. It's gotten bigger. But I'll go back to here once. And so staff has worked with the consultant a little bit, and this is real rough, but I think it's worth to talk about it now so that the next one that you see will be a little bit more refined, a little bit more defined, I guess. So the first thing is this, the red areas, we have them doing red so you guys can see a little bit better, but those are the current incorporated city limits of the municipalities. So I can't really do a split screen, but it's growing significantly with some of our municipalities. And then what we had them add here, so this is the, and I'm going to totally butcher this, and our floodplain administrator is going to be mad at me, but essentially these are the flood hazard areas, if I'm correct on that. But so it's not necessarily just firm, but it's also what's potentially going to be, as you're aware, the county's been working with FEMA on a modernization or a flood map update for about 5-6 years now, I believe. It might become effective next year or the year after that, but essentially these are the flood risk areas. And so this won't be really a part of the future land use map, but I thought it was worth keeping on here to take a look at. There'll be a separate map that'll be environmental constraints. And in Lincoln County, we're flat. The biggest environmental constraint we really have is our flood risk areas. But it's interesting to take a look at it. I mean, it's a substantial area when you look at all of it, the area in the county, and we really don't want development in those areas to occur or to make sure that it's built accordingly. And then along this area, we've never really talked about it that much, but along this is along the Big Sioux River area, there's some different types of things that we don't really talk about too much, like slope and different things, and what I'll call timber areas, and some of those areas that do have what I'll call constraints to development, but some areas that we need to protect. These again will be on our environmental constraints map. But one of the things we did was we highlighted these areas along the interstate because that's primarily where we want to guide. Again, this is an update to the existing comprehensive plan. The existing comprehensive plan, really the main goal policy, even though there's a number of them on there, is to direct development towards the municipalities where infrastructure and services are available. And so outside of directing it towards the municipalities, we do have an interstate system that does facilitate areas where truck traffic can go. And so if we had a wish, it would be to direct a lot of our truck traffic to those areas because then it doesn't impact our townships and our county roads. And so really what we did here is instead of taking a look at the nodal stuff is how far would we go outside of those areas? And one of the things that we recognize is maybe it goes out a little bit too far from those intersections because we don't necessarily just want a straight commercial corridor, industrial corridor along those areas. We really want it to focus at the nodal areas. Otherwise, it could go away from our number one goal is to direct truck traffic to those areas, and hopefully the interstate. So, but one of the things that we also talked about, and I'll just point out over to these areas over here, is that so really the difficulty, and I think I watched you do it tonight, is that some areas just aren't accustomed to where we want development to occur. But there always should be a not here but here kind of a thing. You know, is that I always like to talk about with staff is that we're not a hard no. We're really, you know, this area might be a no, but is there another one? Well, as you can see, the problem with the current comprehensive plan is it's a hard no. Unless you're on the interstate, it's a hard no. Even though I know that you're going to say, well, we've allowed encroachment into areas, and some of those areas aren't facilitating kind of really what we want. So initially, you know, we started looking at some of these areas and just saying if it's off of a state county road, then we would pick those areas and do nodes there. And two parts to that is that one, there's some mechanics to it, like can we provide rural water to it? What's existing there and things like that. The other thing I think is, you know, we've spent a little bit of time driving around the county, and one of the concerns that I have is making sure some of those nodal areas are preserved. And I guess that's a new word that I want to use tonight is preserved. There's areas that we have in the county when you go to an intersection and you think, well, that's a future business area. But we do have houses, you know, and for some reason they put houses right on what I'll call good commercial corridor areas. And so some of these areas might not facilitate development, but they're going to be preserved so that in the event that there is development coming here, is we don't want houses there, is that we want commercial or we want some type of a thing.
How big in those, Toby, like, I mean, they obviously look smaller. It looks like along the interstate, you've got those more defined half mile either side. What would you say on those nodes on Highway 11, like?
Quarter mile.
Either side of the intersection.
And I think on the interstate, probably half miles on those.
Yep.
Yeah. But I think we keep the nodes though,
Yeah.
just so it gives us a little bit of flexibility to
I like
kind
that
of,
idea.
yeah. Plus it looks a little cleaner, you know, there won't be so much of
Well,
that.
and it gives you other options.
Yeah.
than just everybody has to go to the interstate, right?
Well, and it's not available, let's be honest. I mean,
Yeah, that's the other
most of those areas are already used or utilized for stuff. So I think staff would be, would really, you know, get behind the idea of finding additional areas and things like that we could say, well, not here, but here in those kind of areas. But now saying that there might be some constraints with rural water, with roads, with existing things that are there. But overall, I think in this north area of the county, I think we would all agree that that's kind of transitioning. We need to make sure those corridors are protected. Whether the cities get there, or whether we allow development ahead of the cities, it needs to be protected and, you know, in those areas, so. And then I really think, you know, we talked about really, and this came up with your guys' session too, is again that this idea that Lincoln County is really kind of three areas, right? There's the urbanizing area, which is the, you know, what I'll call and I'm not going to completely get this right if I don't remember this, but I'm going to say essentially down to the Klondike north. That's really urbanizing. You got the municipalities and you got a lot of growth and development there. And the Klondike really down to probably 18 is what I'll call that kind of mid-tier thing where it's really rural communities. We don't have a lot of development pressure there. It's coming. It will be there. But essentially, that's what it is. And then that area really south of 18 all the way down to 46 is really rural ag, you know.
Bunch of
And-
hillbillies down there.
I won't go that far. No, I think it's ag.
I'm kidding.
I think
That's
it's
where I
ag,
live.
you know, and we had a stakeholder meeting, and I think that most of the attendants there really concurred with that it's been like that for, you know, forever, right? That South 18's been ag, and then we've had that mid-tier, which is kind of just waiting for stuff to happen to come that area, and then you have that stuff to the north, which is really urbanizing fast, and those kind of things. But, you know, and saying that, I mean, is that no one's more important than the other one, but they each, as a whole, really give Lincoln County a diverse perspective on what it is. I mean, we're not just urbanizing, we are ag. I mean, we do have significant ag portions of it and things like that. And with that, there has to be regulations and ideas that promote and protect that too, so. But just wanted to go through that, get some perspectives from you guys on that part of it. And again, as I pointed out to you at the meeting a couple months ago, there is no rural residential on the current Ferntree land use map. That the policy in 1995 was to do density zoning, 1 per quarter. And although we have a zoning district for rural residential, it was never planned on any of the future land use maps that the counties had. And so that continued onto this map. But not to say that you guys can't discuss that and talk about that. But the stakeholders, the surveys that were received have all not been consistent that they want to keep it that way, so. But any comments or questions on that?
When you say all the surveys and that they want to keep it what way?
Just limited single-family development.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. And then again, what I'd say too, the biggest trend though too is that there's a concern that, and we know this, that when we put a business out in these areas, it feels like we're businesses encroaching on agriculture and residential. So, there's a big concern with that.
So with that, just based on what Robin was talking about, that corridor on Highway 11 where you have those nodes, will all those nodes currently be able to have fire suppression? Or in the next 5 years, based on what the two rural water systems think?
Well, you know, for our needs, when it comes to fire suppression, is whether or not rural water can provide that amount of flow, there will be fire suppression.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah,
Will
that's
rural
our
water-
rule. Our
will-
rules,
does
whether or
ru-
not they can provide it, they're gonna have a tank that's gonna provide it, so.
No,
yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Or-
Yeah, But like
or-
in those
yeah.
nodes, will rural water have enough flow to do it so that they wouldn't have to have a tank?
We'll verify that with them.
Okay.
Yeah, at that point.
I think that would be important
Yeah.
to have that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's more or less, we need to kind of work on that part of it, but just, you know, this is, yeah, again, this is what our consultant has drafted so far together with what they've seen in the surveys, what the stakeholders talked about when they met with you guys 2 months ago. So I think it's pretty consistent with what you guys have talked about and everything. So I think gives us, there'll be a cleaner draft, I guess, saying next month about some of those things. We will take off the flood risk areas, but I think it's good to keep in your mind that that's a constraint, so. But any other comments or questions that you guys have on the future land use map? So,
Not necessarily the map, but you mentioned the surveys. How are you seeing, you know, I know anytime I go to the website, it's the first thing that pops up. Are you seeing good responses, like comparatively, like what we would consider to hopefully be appropriate based on the number of people actually responding to the survey, or is it, how do you think that's going?
yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, we hopefully get the word out more, so more people would participate. What I would consistently say is, I think everyone asks me, and I always say, well, a comprehensive plan isn't controversial, so it's not, you know, it doesn't generate a lot of push behind it. But what I would tell you, and you guys know this is the most important document in the county, right? Because of this document's gonna guide us for the next 20 years. Next year, when we redo the zoning ordinance, it'll be based on whatever policies and goals that we come out of this. So it does affect you, even though you might think it's not, and it's not controversial, and it's not changing you or your property, it will, it does. And so I've tried, you know, I mean, we try to get as much communication. I think what I see is that, again, the results are available on the website from the first phase of the survey, the second phase of the survey, which is currently open. It's very more specific, kind of geared questions and things like that. What I see is trends, you know, whether or not it's 400 or 1,000 people. I mean, we wish everybody would do it. We're seeing definite trends that what we see from the people who are responding. And I think it holds true with what we see on a monthly basis, you know, is what people are saying is that, hey, you know, like everything's good, but there's little tweaks we need to make on this kind of stuff. So, yeah. But I hope that, you know, if I can't, everybody should take the survey if you can take the time to do it, so.
Can we take it more than once?
Well, no, once good enough, yeah. We don't want to stuff the ballot.
There isn't a lockdown on it?
No, there isn't a way to track that, but I mean, it's, you know, it's,
I'm just
you
kidding.
know, we hope everybody does what they can to make sure it's good, but yeah, so. But again, what I'll say too is that this is the first time that Lincoln County's done the comprehensive plan this way. I mean, we're engaging the public and going through this process and making this more of a, what do you want? As opposed to, I think, that the previous ones were, this is what we're doing, you know? And so, you know, if nobody shows up and nobody participates, it's going to be what it is. But I still see what we're seeing from the trends and from the feedback, especially from the stakeholders, is that these are the things that I think we need to change, and that's what we're seeing, so.
Say, Toby, are you engaging, I mean, they're supposed to, because a lot of this comprehensive plan could, you know, they have a lot of thoughts about their growth and what's happening around there. And
Yep, our stakeholder group is about 74 strong, I think. So, yeah, so yep, they're all involved in it. But at this stage, we're still on time frame with what we're needing to do. But there's a lot of just you know, behind the scenes stuff as far as that part of it. And then once we get to this phase, then there's something more for people to talk about, look at too. So, yeah. But beyond that, if you have any questions, otherwise let me know. Otherwise, we'll continue marching forward, and next month you'll see more of that, and then the Board of Commissioners will see some of that stuff too, so, okay? I guess if there's any comments or guidance that you want as you look at this too, but.
I have nothing this time. I'm just excited that it's moving forward, and I really look forward to what comes out of it.
Yeah.
Or the next steps. Every meeting, you guys are getting a little bit better and a little more developed, and it's exciting.
And I think I'm excited for next year too, is that to go into that next phase. So first phase is the comprehensive plan. And next year is really the zoning and subdivision ordinance. And I try to not get ahead of myself on this because I see even stuff like tonight, like, well, this is the stuff we need to have in the regulations that would help address some of the things that we have going on in the county, policy-wise, law-wise, and those different types of things. But in order to get to that step, you got to start with this step first to say, what is it that we really want to see? You know? And again, I don't want to push that lightly, is that in Lincoln County, we told people what they were going to see. This process, we're telling people, no, what do you really want to see? You know, what don't you want? What do you want? That kind of stuff. So hopefully you participate. So, okay?
Yep.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Toby. All right, with that.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Aye.
I believe we got a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
All right.
All opposed? All right, thank you.